Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Theresa Powers. I'm a naturopathic doctor at Lotus Integrative Medicine, and I'm going to talk to you today about some hormones that are involved in keeping your 24-hour clock cycling and some ways that we can help those be at their optimum. I just want to start out by saying these are general guidelines and they're not for anyone who has a particular issue or a problem that needs to get evaluated on its own. So please just take these as general things and maybe they do or they don't apply to you. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you, and we're going to talk first about cortisol, which is a hormone that is secreted by your adrenal glands. And it has a normal daily cycle to it. So I've put the normal cycle here, which is to spike in the morning and then drop down and be at its lowest about 10 to 11 p.m. Cortisol is a hormone that is going to make you feel alert and awake, and it is what wakes you up in the morning. And it is also what you dips and makes you feel more tired at night. So there's several ways that this cycling can go wrong. So you can have it be flipped so that instead of being high in the morning, it actually becomes high at night. So it's low in the morning and then higher at night. You can also see a total of low levels just throughout the whole day. Those people are really fatigued all day long. You can also see something where there's generally high levels all day long, and those people have a lot of trouble falling asleep. You can also see random spikes in the curve, and that can have to do with a stress response because cortisol is a response to stress in the system if it happens at irregular times. And that can have to do with a person's eating habits, a stressful situation, and it can also contribute to long-term cortisol in your system all the time can contribute to some blood sugar problems because it actually makes you less sensitive to insulin. So the next hormone is melatonin. And so cortisol and melatonin will cycle throughout the day and night together. So the green line here, we've got cortisol. The red line, we have melatonin. And if you can see, there's sort of this time in the evening around like 9 to 10 to 11 o'clock where people will experience their lowest levels of cortisol. And that is also when melatonin starts to rise. So this is a point where you really want to take advantage of this time to go to sleep. A lot of times what happens is people will push it to go past 10, 10:30, 11 o'clock. And because you get that second dump of cortisol, like instead of being really low, you'll get another spike of it. And then you will find yourself being awake until 1 o'clock in the morning. Now, this is the second wind, and I will tell you, I also struggle with like keeping on this cycle. And I actually used it in medical school to study because if I made it past 10 o'clock, I knew I could make it the whole night and just keep studying anatomy. So really, it is best to take advantage of that slight cue. It's very quiet. It's like a whisper that says, go to sleep. It's not like a glaring, like you're going to pass out kind of fatigue. It's really more subtle than that. So right around that time, because your melatonin actually doesn't spike till later on, like, between midnight and 3 a.m. That's when you have those highest levels of that. But taking advantage of that low cortisol can help you get to sleep earlier. Caffeine. So a lot of us use this to stay awake during the day. And the way it works is it actually causes your body to release cortisol. That's what makes you feel alert from the caffeine. I don't generally object if people want 1 cup in the morning. It really depends on what's going on with them. Some people should have none. But if you do decide to have the coffee, make sure you consume extra water with it. And then trying to keep it on the normal cortisol curve. So having it more earlier in the day instead of later on where, if you feel that 4 o'clock slump, like having that caffeine, while it make you feel better, it can also contribute to not sleeping at night. So stopping before 3 p.m., and some people have to stop even earlier than that, like before noon, because they can be really sensitive. But everybody's caffeine sensitivities really vary. So knowing what does and doesn't work for you, but that's just one area that you can pay attention to see how it makes you feel and if you need to make adjustments to get on a better schedule. So speaking of schedules, I'm not a big fan of schedules, and I know it can be really hard, especially right now, staying on a schedule. But it is what is best to keep our daily cycles really regular. So going to sleep and waking up at the same time each day, that puts you in a predictable pattern, and keeps those cortisol and melatonin like working correctly and together. Eating regular balanced meals, because not having food can be a stress on your system, and keeping your blood sugar, pretty even, as opposed to spiking it and dropping it back down, that contributes to a lot of issues with how you feel on a regular basis. And doing some form of daily exercise, it can be really great to do that earlier in the day when you have more energy, and not so much late at night, where you could potentially spike a cortisol level doing heavy exercise, and it can keep you awake. And then bonus points for some form of meditation that can help you keep in a pattern of every day if you do the same thing every day. Sleep hygiene is super important. This is a big thing when people aren't able to sleep at night, and one of the things I like to focus on. But be ready for your cortisol dip around 9:30. This means you have to have some wind down time ahead of this. You can't just go from working and doing emails and watching a really exciting show and to just being asleep. So having that wind down time without screens, because the screens, the light from them will have an effect on you, and will keep you more awake and alert. So limiting those, and sleeping in a dark room with a light that isn't any brighter than the full moon. It makes sense, right? We've evolved with just the moon as a light source at night, the moon and the stars. So having things brighter than that can actually cause you to not release melatonin. So, do you have to sleep in like a completely dark room that's like completely dark? I would say no, generally. It depends on if you can or cannot sleep that way, but having natural light wake you up is great. But if there's something like a street light outside, that can be really hard to sleep with, and that's usually brighter than a full moon. But just making sure that it's dark enough that there's nothing brighter than that, like no TVs on, not having bright night lights in the room, or like light from a hallway or something like that coming in, that can be too bright. But just making sure that it stays dark and secluded from that will be really helpful to making sure you get enough melatonin, because it is antioxidant, and we want to see you having that released at nighttime. So I hope that was helpful. Just a few things, and again, it's general guidance, and everybody's body does work a little different, and so to have things more tailored to you is more of an individual thing. Thank you.